Thank you for the reminder. Now we're recording. Last summer, we ran a petition drive and collected 2,000 signatures behind an effort to launch a civilian oversight effort. And that effort is ongoing. And today's program is an opportunity for our community, including our local elected officials, to learn from people who've been doing this other places, learn how things got done, learn how the implementation of the program is going, so that we are able to learn from them to see the proper direction to take in our own jurisdiction. And so with that, our format today, we're going to keep to a tight hour and be done by 12:30 local time. And we're going to give our speakers some room to spread their wings here. So we'll have 20 minutes for each sort of set of speakers, and then 20 minutes at the end for question and answer. And so we'll invite all of our participants, first of all, to keep yourselves on mute, and second of all, to please, at any time during the program, use the chat function to save questions. And when we get to that last third of our program, around 12:10, we'll switch to those questions, and your moderators will feed questions to our speakers. So again, thank you very much for being here. And with that, because if you can tell, let's see if, oh, I can do the spotlight. We're going to invite Kevin Madden to be our first speaker. If you can't tell, he is on a plane and won't be with us for very long. But Kevin Madden's an elected official, a council member in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. And Kevin, we're just going to jump right in. If there's anything else we need to know about your bio, your background, jump in. But otherwise, please kick us off. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, just as soon as you hand the mic over to me, you'll start giving an announcement on this plane. I'm going to go off of my ear set and try to see if that's a little bit better. Hold on one second.
Larger electronic devices like laptops must be stored prior to boarding.
I think you're probably hearing more of the flight attendant than you are of me. Can you hear me okay?
So, ladies and gentlemen,
And if not, I'm going to pass the mic over to
We can hear
our
you all
executive
right.
director, Barbara O'Malley.
We can hear you fine, Kevin,
by
if you
the
want
gate
to jump in.
agent for weight and balance
What's that?
purposes.
We can hear you okay.
Okay, great. So as was said, I'm a county council member for Delaware County, which is in southeast Pennsylvania. It's one of the collar counties of Philadelphia, with about 550,000 people. And just by way of background, I've been in office for 8 years. And when I came into office, when I was running, one of the main areas that my running mate and I ran on was around criminal justice in Delaware County. And some background on specifically our jail is that in the late 90s, the county brought in GEO or its predecessor to build a new facility in the interests of kind of saving county dollars and making the investment themselves. And in return for doing that, they handed the keys over to GEO to run the facility. And so from 1998 until when I ran in 2017, like I said, they really had, forfeited the oversight of the jail. And Delaware County had a couple other interesting peculiarities and really unfortunate peculiarities. One of which is that so first of all, it was the only for-profit privately run prison in the state of Pennsylvania. And secondly, it was overseen by what was called the Board of Prison Inspectors. And it hung its hat on a law in the state that was specific to Delaware County going back to the 1800s that allowed for its oversight to be run by this 5-member board, 3 members of which were appointed by the judges and 2 by county council. But most importantly, they were given carte blanche on what they did with their $50 million budget. And so unlike any other facet of county government where anything over $25,000 in a contract size would have to go to county council for approval, the prison board had full reign to do what they chose to with their approximately $50 million budget. And to add one further element to the kind of lack of transparency and direct oversight, the facility was run by a superintendent who effectively kind of oversaw this contract, who was politically connected. He was the brother of the Republican Party chair, had been problematic in the district attorney's office, and was kind of put to run this contract as a way to kind of hide him, quote unquote. Um, and he over the course of the next 15 years, there were a number of harassment allegations against him that were buried with payouts in return for non-disclosure, in return for, signing NDAs around the issue. And that was really how things were run. You, just had an 1,800 bed jail that was overseen by this board. They had all their meetings within the walls of the jail. They weren't allowing any video recording of their meetings. And the meetings I did go to as a candidate, they lasted all of about 3 minutes. There was no deliberation on anything. Like I said, there was no video, and off they went. So it became really a centerpiece of my campaign to run, which was to, open up oversight, deprivatize the prison, and ensure that it was run in a way that aligned with our values of treating folks who are in our custody, who are churning through a county jail, oftentimes in a brief time, and ensure that they're on their feet in the best possible way to stay out and to not recidivate. So what we did first and foremost was in 2019. The unfortunate, all it took was a majority vote by council to end this prison board and put in its place what we have today, which is a jail oversight board. And it sounds pretty similar, but in terms of function, it's quite different. The jail oversight board is something that comes right off of Pennsylvania's state books. It's a structure where you have two common pleas judges, a county council member, oh my goodness, the executive director, the sheriff, the controller, and then 3 citizens appointees who would be appointed by the executive director. So it's a 9-person in total board. And in addition to, having these meetings in a more public space and having them be video recorded, the structure was such that it went back to what every other department of county government works, which is that any contracts over $25,000 would need to be approved or not approved by county council. It ceased to have this carte blanche on what it did with its allocated budget. While we were still in the minority on council, there was 2 of us that won in 2017. We were able to pass legislation to end the prison board and put in its place this jail oversight board. It came into effect right at the tail end of 2019, right after the other 3 seats on county council were flipped. And so one might cynically say that the reason the other 3 on council agreed was that it allowed them to make these appointments before they left. But regardless, it did set us on the tracks of really changing the oversight of the jail. So this occurred in late 2019. And over the next year or 2, we prepared for the massive change that would be ending this contract with GEO, putting in place a warden, and bringing the jail under direct control of the county. One of the questions that I think I saw asked was, what was the pushback? What occurred in terms of the challenges doing so? And really, I think it primarily ran around both a stated concern and an unstated concern. The stated concern was financial. We had folks who said, well, this is going to cost more money. There's efficiencies that a multinational company like GEO realized by running it. The unstated was that, effectively the county wanted to remove themselves from responsibility. So anything, that might cause a lawsuit, it would be subject to GEO's dealing with it. And so what they did is they paid below market. The wages were roughly 20% less than neighboring counties. But in return, there was really a degree of letting um, the staff run things without much in the way of accountability for, mistreatment of inmates. And subsequently, like it sounds like this is the case in Southwest Ohio. There were a multitude of situations where inmates were mistreated and filed lawsuits against the county, which GO took, litigation responsibility for. Um, so that was, I think, really what the concern was. Well, if the county is taking direct control, you're now going to take direct accountability for what occurs at the jail, as opposed to allowing GO to sort of take the blame if anything bad were to occur. Um, so um, let's see. The contract was ended in 2022, and since that time, it's been under direct control. And over the course of that time, one area that we've made a major focus is investing in services. A very high percentage of the people who come through our jail are dealing with substance abuse and mental health issues. The number is as much as 40% have either a known substance abuse issue or mental health issue. And services to treat these folks while they're in our jail, while under private for-profit control, those are costs that reduce the profit of the prison operator. However, if you're looking at it through the lens of the public interest, these are investments that we absolutely want to make to ensure that we're improving public health and we're improving outcomes for those who pass through our custody. So a lot of what we put forth have been investments in these sort of services. We have implemented, gone from no medication assisted treatment for people suffering from opioids use disorder to now providing all three major forms of treatment. We've started programs that improve the likelihood of someone getting a job when they go on the outside. A program called New Leash on Life that brings dogs that are being, that are at risk of being euthanized. They're brought in and put into the help of inmates who learn how to care for them and to help them to be ready for their foster families when they go on the outside. And also the program gives these inmates who are participating in it the opportunity to get, skills that will give them a higher chance of being employed when they leave our jail. It's been a great program. It's been running for now 2 years. And it's just one of several that have a similar bent toward reform and reducing recidivism. So overall, and they're it's really hard to do this while I get hearing announcements in the background. But that just gives you a color of what we've been doing since the time that we changed oversight and deprivatized the jail. What I'm going to do at this point is, so it's not too abrupt, I'm going to pass the mic over to our executive director, Barbara O'Malley. She has served on the Jail Oversight Board with me over the past couple of years, and she can speak with a bit more color around what we've been doing over the last couple of years. But I appreciate your opportunity to share a little bit about what we're doing in Delaware County, and hope this was helpful, even if a bit distracting. Thanks a lot.
Kevin, thank you so much for being here, and we appreciate your comments. And I'll pass it off to Barbara in a moment. And for folks who have joined us in progress, that was Council Member Kevin Madden in from Delaware County, Pennsylvania, boarding a plane and about to take off. And so now we're going to pass to Barbara. Pick up where Kevin left off. Thanks for being here.
Certainly, you're welcome. And I know I just have a couple minutes, so I think just to speak of the citizen part of the Jail Oversight Board. So we have a very open and transparent process for selecting individuals. We open it up to the community, our application process, so anyone can apply. And we're really looking for a variety of expertise to enhance what Councilman Madden had mentioned were our required members, which are judges, executive, controller, sheriff. We have someone with a drug and alcohol. We have drug and alcohol background previously. We had medical background previously. We look for someone with lived experience. So we have someone with lived experience as a citizen representative, also focusing on reentry work. And we have someone now who has done this similar work in a state facility. So running programs, bringing people in. So I think it's important to think about what are those complementary skills or insights from your citizen members that you would want to reflect and enhance the Jail Oversight Board. And as far as the meetings being public, I think that is really helpful. We do have members from the correctional facility come and speak sometimes as they are able to. And I mean that from the perspective of sharing what their insights are, maybe things that we don't know about or things that are contrary to what the warden might be describing as a situation. So it's an opportunity to get some insight from people as well. But in terms of the agenda, it's typically our warden is sharing data, particularly around the number of people held, their conditions. Councilman Madden talked about the people with substance use issues, mental health issues, all those things are shared. It's also an opportunity to celebrate staff, recognizing long-term leadership, long-term tenure at the facility, and very big emphasis on our programming. So what are we doing around reentry? What are we doing with our GED programs? What are the outcomes? What are the percentages of people finishing those programs? We also have at that meeting an opportunity for people from each department to speak. So we ask them to think about all the different services that you don't really hear about or understand how they work. Something like food service. How do they determine the menu? How do you deliver food service? Our training protocol, our MAT program. So we have had a variety of facets of the department, our records department. It also gives that ability for teams to highlight themselves in a public space and understand better all the different facets of the facility, not just simply the security facet or even the programming facet, but all those things that go into running a facility and making it successful. So I know I'm at our 20 minutes, just wanted to share that kind of perspective of what a meeting actually looks like and who is on that board, and happy to answer questions when the time comes.
Thank you, Barbara. Really appreciate you being here and for being concise, but we'll have hopefully more time towards the end of the program to hear more. We are next going to welcome colleagues from Essex County, New Jersey, Judge Jose Linares and Michele Vanderstreet, who have intimate knowledge of the Essex County Civilian Oversight Task Force. Judge, do you want to start, and then you and Michele can share the next 20 minutes or so, if that
Yeah,
works?
so I will do that, and then I'm going to have to step off because of the other commitment I mentioned to you earlier, but Michele will stay for the duration, and she'll be able to answer any questions you may have. Similar to what you just heard, we are the creation of our civilian task force, which is what we call ourselves, was as a result of some bad results from reports that had come out, national reports that came in, people who inspected the jail. There was a lot of bad press, a lot of tough politics going on about what was going on in the jail. And the county executive wanted to look into it. We had a conversation about that. And the question becomes, well, what is this thing going to look like? And how do we create it? And who would serve it? And, all of the same questions that was just being talked about. So we thought that first we had to talk to our county commissioners and get them on board to see if they wanted to. I met with the chairman. I met with the Essex County executive, the chairman of the commissioners, the sheriff's department, and we kicked around the idea of the creation of this task force, and the thought was that the task force could then act independently of both the commissioners and the Essex County executive's office and look into the issues that were being raised through these reports that were being issued. Now, a lot of that had to do at the time of the creation had to do with ICE. We had a lot of detainees at the time. Not only did we have Essex County detainees, we had detainees from other counties, we had detainees from the federal system. By way of background, I was a federal judge until about 5-6 years ago. In New Jersey, I was the chief federal judge for New Jersey, and eventually retired from that job and went to work at McCarter and English, where I am working now. I am the executive director of the Essex County Jail Task Force. Our job as a law firm is to provide support to the task force. And by support, I mean everything. We have a complaint line. We have an email, complaint reception that we can, respond to complaints and investigate them. We provide the video conferencing when we do public meetings. We videotape them. We provide that. We provide legal opinion when necessary in different things. So it is a lot of work that comes out of the task force. The rest of the task force is composed of, and I think following up the young lady that just spoke after the guy that was in the plane. I think that the citizenship of the task force is very important because you need people who bring different perspectives into things. So we selected an ex-governor of New Jersey to be the chairman of the task force, Governor McGreevey. He is very active in the reentry program in New Jersey. I have worked with him in the federal court in the reentry program of the federal court. He had worked with me or given me advice at one point or another when we were having issues with federal detainees at some of the county facilities, not Essex County. So I thought he had the depth and level of expertise and truly cares about it, that he would make a good chairman. So he was selected. Of course, he had to be interviewed by the county, approved by the county executive's office, but he was selected. Then we wanted to make sure we had people with different types of expertise based upon what we had seen on the reports. There was medical facilities issues and medical care issues. So we wanted to have a public medicine expert. Dr. Purnell was the original doctor. There's a different doctor in the board now, but she's a renowned person in that field, and she could be helpful in. And we were going to start with medical. We wanted to get her input and make sure that she was in a position to ask the right questions when we had the public meetings and when we had the medical people come to the public meetings to answer specific questions about the facilities. We wanted to make sure we had someone who had been an inmate. So we have somebody who now is the next inmate, but he's now in law school. The kid is doing a great job and is a member of our task force. We have somebody who is a ex-U.S. attorney prosecutor and now defense attorney. We have a specific defense attorney slot also. We have a public representative in there, and maybe another couple that I'm missing right now. Michele, I may be. If I do, you can pick it up later when I get done. So that was the creation. Now the question is, okay, we're going to create this task force. What's the empowering document? How are we going to do this? This didn't exist. We were doing it from scratch. And by the way, Joel, I would encourage you to I can try and speak to her and see if she would like to get on a call with you. At the time that we were creating this task force, a woman named Courtney Gachon worked with me very closely in creating it. She was the county counsel at the time. She's not in county, she's in private sector now. But she was instrumental in, drafting the ordinance that ultimately gave the empowering to create this task force. So I would encourage you, if you need information on her or whatever, I can send it to you, or Michele can send it, and I can certainly call her and tell her what it is you're trying to do. the other thing was, okay, once we had the ordinance, the question was hiring the people, right? And these are all volunteer folks, right? So it's hard to get people, and it's a lot of work to come and put their effort, but there are people who care and are dedicated to this, and they do come and they come to the meetings. But it was, we had to sell it. There was the politics of it, right? We had to make sure there were some people in the commissioner's office. Maybe some people liked it, maybe some people didn't, whatever. They went back and forth. Ultimately, they passed a resolution adopting the ordinance so that the task force could be created. Excuse me. Since the creation of the task force, we have conducted numerous meetings. We took the issues one at a time. We didn't try to investigate everything. It was just going to be too unwieldy. So we tried to sort of triage what are the most important aspects of the jail that are wanting, based on reports that we read and based on our visits. We insisted that we would have unfettered visiting rights to the jail. And by unfettered, I mean, that they are not going to say no if we show up to inspect. So we did a hierarchy of what are the things to be investigated. We started with mental, not mental illness, but medical, and then that slid into mental illness, drug addiction. We often in our meetings have vendors or people from outside come and talk at the meetings, and services they can provide. Especially, we're very interested in seeing what we can do with people who are reentering after they come out of the jail, because we can have them in the jail. They're detainees. They're usually short-term stays. Sometimes they get to be long, but by and large, they're short-term stays, and they get sober while they're there. And then when they come out, they're right back where they were. And we thought that this was an opportunity to start working towards, what do we do with these people as they're coming out that have addiction and substance abuse problems. So we've been working on that kind of thing. We had the housing unit. We had issues with that. We investigated that. We made recommendations. Now, the key is, though, it's all about the budget and it's all about money. You can make, and there's very little the board can do in terms of having teeth. You can make the recommendations. The recommendations are public, so that's where the teeth is, right? The reports go to the commissioners and to the county executive. They're extensive. We're happy to provide them to you if you want to see them. And they're done at the conclusion. We take different things each year, and each year we try to get our investigation completed, make recommendations, and move on and try to do the next one, kind of thing. I think that's generally it. I mean, things changed anyway, and by the way, it is working very well. Let's start there. It is working very well to date. There are a lot of positive reaction by the public about it, and by the community. So that's good. I think the public, from the politicians' point of view, I think it was a success that way. It also, some of the problems were alleviated by virtue of the fact that there were, we ceased taking ICE detainees, for example. That took out a lot of the pressure and the overcrowding. We had an overcrowding problem. So that was one of the solutions, right? Was not to take these people anymore. And then, we could address it a different way. That reduces the population and that kind of thing. So there were things external to the task force that served to help us correct some of the problems. And then is the question of budgetary concerns. Once it gets to the commissioners, the question is, what do we need to do to implement this, and do we have enough money to do it, right? And that's usually the path that it goes. And when they have the budget, they do things, and they have been very receptive. At least in Essex County, both the commissioners and the county executive have been very receptive to all our recommendations. I think they respond to us fairly quickly when we have inmate complaints or things that need to be addressed right away. We too had a problem with violence in the jail and deaths and all of that. We still do. But I think that it's not as severe as it used to be. But that's a general overview of the Essex County Civilian Task Force. I have Michele here, who is my executive director. I'm the executive director of the Jail Task Force. Michele is my chief of staff, who runs the Jail Task Force on day to day. So, Michele, I'm going to hand it over to you because I have to run to the doctor's office and I have an appointment in 25 minutes. But I'll stay for a little bit of the presentation. I'm just not going to be rude, okay? I'm just going to have to sign off in a little bit.
Thank you, Judge. We appreciate you being here very much. Hope you feel better soon as well. Thank you for
Thank
being
you. Hey, Joel, I mean it. If you need other stuff, let us know. Make a list and say, I hope you guys do it. It sounds like you have problems that were very similar to the ones we have in Essex County. I'm not going to say Essex County is perfect. It's not. But I think we've improved it a lot. And I'm glad that you are taking the time and effort to do something in your place.
Thank you for saying so. Appreciate you being here, Judge.
All right. Go ahead, Michele.
Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon now, everyone. As Judge Linares said, I'm Michele Vanderstreet. I'm an attorney at McCarter English, and I assist Judge Linares and the task force in what we've been doing for the Essex County Correctional Facility. And I thought it might be helpful to give you just some examples of what we actually were able to accomplish because it is pretty awesome. So one of the problems we have here is the mental health crisis and the fact that, as you know, I'm sure, special housing units, you often have to, it's more of an isolation when there's an issue, or if someone has psychological issues, they can't be in the general population. The problem is, oftentimes, especially at our facility, we have people who are really kind of transitioning, right? Because they're awaiting trial, that maybe the average is staying 29 days. And the mental health issue was big it was a big concern. And so what we did was we helped speak, and we have a very good collaborative relationship with the people at the facility. And what we did was, and they wanted the help, right? They want to make things better. And so we developed kind of standard screening for mental health issues upon intake, because often if there's, a situation, and they were telling me one example where an inmate who, obviously had some mental issues, but they didn't know at intake, and then started giving one of the gang members and the general population a hard time. And, almost to his credit, the gang member said, back off, enough. But because of the mental, issues, he just kept going, and it resulted in violence. And so if that inmate had been able to, at intake, been stopped and said, wait, this is someone who has psychological issues, we should put him in special housing. So anyway, that's to say that the task force helped develop these screening tools and helped with outside help from psychological, psychologists and social workers, develop training for officers. And, and the officers were able to actually identify, oh, this person isn't eating. This person isn't refusing to take a shower. There might be something else there. Let's get him or her evaluated. In addition, there was, I'm sure you deal with overcrowding, and in New Jersey, we have what's called the Anne Klein facility, which is for forensic patients, patients or inmates, or someone who needs to really be committed to a psychiatric facility. And there are certainly inmates at our correctional facility that deserve or should belong there, but there's not enough beds. So what the task force did, and we had collaborative public meetings with representatives from the jail and other individuals, and just tried to, sometimes it's just brainstorming and spitballing, and we came up with a facility in New Jersey. It's called Silver Lakes, that was not being used anymore. It was a hospital, but it was abandoned, wasn't used. And so now the facility was able to allocate a certain amount of beds, and it's kind of almost like a warm handoff. If an inmate is ready to be discharged but should be going to a forensic psychiatric facility, this is a place to transition, and you have to work with the judges and the prosecutors and the public defenders to make sure this is something that can be done, at discharge and based on the crimes that the inmate is accused of. In addition, the special housing unit, sometimes inmates need to be isolated for certain reasons. But we did a large investigation into that, and there was concern that there's different levels, right, of inmates that need to be isolated. And in New Jersey, we actually have legislation that only allows isolation for a certain amount of time, only a certain amount of consecutive days. We wanted to make sure the facility was properly abiding by that. Again, there's always constraints, right? So yes, this is the rule. It can only be a certain amount of days. But then if there is violence, or, we at one point had the pandemic, and so then there's a lockdown, and then that impacts the amount of days. But for the special housing unit, they realized that there were individuals in there that were not as much of a danger to themselves or others, but still were not ready to go to Gen Pop, right? So kind of in the middle there. And if you think about it, and this is something we've been dealing with in our most recent issues with mental health, so many people in America have mental health problems, right? Now think about, you've been thrown into, if you have mental health problems, even if very minimal, now you're thrown into jail. And sometimes it's, we're not talking career criminals all the time, right? This is someone who is here for the first time, or there's a lot of circumstances which can make it very difficult. So the task force helped the facility to develop what's called a step down unit. So it's kind of, you're in special housing, so you're not yet in Gen Pop, but you're not completely isolated because you're not really a danger to someone else, or you're not ready for that just yet. So I've been focusing a lot on mental health. And Joel, please tell me just to shut my mouth when my time is up. Don't worry about that.
You're doing great. You want to take a couple more minutes and then we'll open it up?
Okay, great. We most recently had, and as the judge said, we had our public meetings, which are great because we have the warden of the jail, we have the medical director, we have the head of the psychiatry unit, and then we have the individual who's in charge of recreation. So we have all these representatives from the jail. We have the task force members who are sometimes asking difficult questions. And we also have outside community members, and people want to get involved. We have different people. We have from religious affiliations and different community services who want to come offer what they can help. So anyway, we've been focusing a lot on addiction, reentry, and the MAT program. And one of the things that we were able to do was work with the medical director and establish, upon an inmate's release, we worked with about 20 agencies and have a designated discharge planner at the jail, so that they're 5 days a week. And so we made a connection with the Walgreens close to the facility, so that when an inmate who is taking the MAT drugs like Suboxone or methadone, something like that, upon release, they are given a ticket for a specific bus that gets to that Walgreens. And if they show their jail ID, we worked with these agencies so that they would get that medicine right away, because that is something that is really difficult to deal with when someone has an addiction and they're released. And I will say one of the things, and again, tell me to stop talking because I am very passionate about this. I just think it's so important. One of the things the task force does too is unannounced visits to the facility. So of course we have meetings with the representatives and stuff, and we have planned visits, but sometimes the unannounced visits are important. And we don't just show up cold. We call half an hour beforehand and say, or send an email like, listen, these are the individuals who are coming. And it is very informative. And it is good sometimes to just speak with the nurses on staff at that point. And the most recent unannounced visit, when we went, we were speaking about, and there was someone, we heard someone behind a closed door, no window. And they said, well, that's, someone who's going through detox. And we said, okay. So and one of the members on our task force has dealt with drug addiction, and that person was there with me, and we said, okay, so how long are they behind? How are they like locked up there physically? And they said, well, depending upon the amount of days and the substance, for safety reasons and for physical, precautions, that's what happens with detox. And it was interesting because this individual said, I know how important that is, and of course the safety protocols, but also a big part of detox is talking to people and having someone reach out to you. And when you're struggling with addiction, just to be locked behind a door. So that was one thing. We're like, okay, at our next meeting, let's talk about that. Let's see what we can do, that kind of thing. But what the medical staff were telling us was that often, once you come off things that we wouldn't know, when you go through detox and you're no longer addicted, the problem is, and often if you're taking the MAT meds, sometimes that can make your body even more vulnerable, right? So if upon reentry, if you're discharged in reentry, even the slightest amount of a drug that you used to take a lot could kill you, because your system is so beat up at that point. So it's so many things that I don't think are highlighted, and it's important that we pick one at a time and we just try and go after it, and we see how can we help, what can we do to get the community help, what can we do. And unfortunately, a lot of it is funds. I know a lot of it is money. It's not enough staff, and that you try and get, again, it's spitballing. And I remember saying, like, well, can we get, students in med school, or students who are learning to become, or in school to become psychologists? Like, do they, maybe an intern to come do some therapy at the jail? So anyway, I've been talking a long time.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you, Michele. I appreciate it. And thank you to those who are leaving comments in the chat. And as a reminder, we're going to close up shop at 12:30 today. So we're going to keep it tight and continue to learn about the ways in which jail oversight, particularly civilian oversight, have been implemented in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, and Essex County, New Jersey. Before going to the chat, I was going to ask Barbara to come back, and I wonder, I'm going to put you side by side. Barbara, could you speak to how you did, if we were to ask a question about the impact of the Oversight Board in Delaware County, how do you answer that question? How do you speak to impact?
Yeah, the biggest impact is transparency and awareness. I mean, we have, similar to what it sounds like this group is, there was something called the Delco Coalition for Prison Reform, Delco CPR, and they were very active, as Councilman Madden was saying, prior to the deprivatization, and had a lot of concerns about what was happening. So when you look at, and we also have in Pennsylvania something called a Pennsylvania Prison Society, and their responsibility is to go to the various prisons throughout the state and do unannounced visits as well and report. Both of them literally would get no information from the facility. So the Jail Oversight Board, just having that, had really opened up and allowed people to come in that hadn't been in before. So not just county, because again, some of us on that Jail Oversight Board, frankly, one could argue have a vested interest as well as telling a more positive story, because we're related to the county who is contracting, who is running this service. But having those external partners come in and be able to verify, and there's absolutely a keeping people honest kind of thing. So whether it's new initiatives and programs, people being more willing to work with us. We have, I think Councilman Madden mentioned our Leash on Life, where the dogs are in the facility. We also have an Inside Out program where we have a partnership with our Penn State University, comes in and holds a class with students in the facility for credit. Not to mention all of our rehabilitation. And I would say our other county departments, it's a real strength, because our county workforce development also now has a specific grant around reentry that they are now operating within the facility, working on job reentry with people in the institution. We also have one that focuses through veterans solely on veterans. Those things wouldn't have happened previously, just for the transparency, just for the openness, just for being out there and accountable.
I appreciate that, Barbara. I'm gonna take one question in the chat and broaden it a bit. I'm curious about, I mean, the jail has so many stakeholders, and you've both sort of described them in some form. And we, at least in Montgomery County, have a for-profit company called NAFCare that we contract with, of course, to provide mental and medical care inside the jail. And they have their own set of interests in addition to the ones that they're legally required to provide for us. So one question in the chat was around healthcare and how it's provided in your jail. And I would also entertain, like, how do you all manage the various, not just personalities, like interests of the stakeholders that are invested in the jail, from law enforcement to law to mental health and community groups? How do you sort of manage those stakeholders? Is that a fair question? Somebody want to pick that up?
I'll just say about the healthcare contract. We do have a contract as well. So healthcare is about 20% of the cost of running the prison is just our single healthcare contract. We contract with an organization called WellPath. There aren't too many others out there that I'm aware of. And I would say that it's always challenging. It is a very tough place to provide medical care. There's, frankly, stories of concerns and lawsuits with probably every provider. We do RFP on a regular basis. And I should say we're going to, because we're just new to ownership, but we're going to be issuing an RFP, which also keeps people on their toes about cost, services, service delivery. So making sure that none of your contractors take these accounts for granted is very, very important. Making sure that you're always going back out for requests for proposals and the potential to switch vendors. It's difficult, it's radical to change a vendor of that type or size, but if you don't continually go out, you'll find yourself the pricing just going out of control and the services maybe not getting the attention they need.
Thanks, Barbara. Michele, you want to jump in on this one?
Yeah, just about kind of managing all the different personalities, like you said, that can be difficult. And certainly in some of our meetings, you will hear task force members go at people at the facility or in the county, and they say, well, listen, you're not there, you don't realize you want you want tablets for all the inmates, and you want all these services and everything, but then something happens and someone gets violent, and it's so what we've done is, and I feel like it's beneficial to the representatives at the facility, because it's, instead of kind of attacking them and saying, you're not doing this, you need to be doing this, we hold this meeting where we ask questions, we come up with suggestions, we talk about things, and then our format really is to kind of draft a report with recommendations and what we think would be best, and allow the facility to come back and say, what they can, that kind of thing. That goes to the freeholders. And usually we find within, it's not magic science, but within a couple of months, maybe a year, steps have been taken, right? And what the warden has said to us, and people at the facility have said, as much as we're kind of breaking chops and giving them a hard time and saying, you need to be doing this, or this needs to be improved, this needs to be better, they say thank you, because if you didn't do that, we wouldn't be necessarily making some of these changes or working towards these changes. And it does help. It does make for the betterment of the facility. So often it can be a little tense at times, but ultimately gets to good results. You're muted, Joel.
Thank you. I've only been using Zoom for 6 years. Why should I know how to press a button? Thank you both. There's a question in the chat about the use of restraint chairs, and I also might broaden that a bit too, because we've done some exploration. So the homicide that I mentioned earlier in our jail involved the improper use of restraint chair earlier this year. We've done some exploration of use of force incidents, at least over the last 6 months, and there's some strong correlation between the use of restraint chairs and excessive force in particular. And so I'm curious if that is an issue that's come up, but I'm also issue maybe in a slightly broader perspective on, like, is part of the role that your oversight bodies have taken to comment and recommend on things, like even at that level of tactic, right? Like, are there things that you rule on or investigate or recommendations that you provide that are at that level of sort of operational advice? Does that make sense? Anybody want to start?
Yeah, I, I could speak to that. I do not believe, I could be wrong, but as far as I'm aware, there's not restraint chairs. Like I said, if there's, isolation, that kind of thing. Um, and in the special housing unit, there will be, meals will be given directly to an inmate in the isolated cell. So I don't believe restraints are used, but we do, obviously, with staying in our lane, talk about some of the operational things. For one example is, we wanted the inmates to have access to photocopiers and to work on their legal cases and that kind of thing. And it was a bit of a debate. And then, honestly, at one point, an inmate dismantled one and beat another inmate. And so that's when the facility comes to us and says, hey, they can't, we can't give them everything. So then we worked on organizing training on legal issues and making sure they had access to tablets where they could try and get in touch with their attorneys, because that is also something. But um, I don't believe there's restraint chairs as far.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate that, Barbara. Yeah.
yeah, I'm in the same position. I literally texted because I do not believe we do as well. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound like anything we want to be doing. So just confirming. Um, but I would also say when it comes to operations, I mean, I think that's actually a danger of jail oversight board is getting too in the weeds on operations because there really are, especially if you have a community board whose frankly focus is probably going to be more on the incarcerated person and their experience and reentry and safe. You want to make sure that your correctional officers also know that the jail oversight board supports them as well. This environment has to be safe for the correctional officers. There has to be policies in place that protects them as well. So I think oftentimes, a lot of these groups come from these stories of horrible treatment of incarcerated persons, but you can't forget that that facility, there's people who've been there a long time. They work in those conditions as well and being respectful for what they do. And as Michele highlighted, there could be things that sound like great ideas to a layperson. And then when you talk to a person who's actually operating the facility, it's like, no, for a variety of reasons. So we stay away from operational stuff. But I would say that's why it's so important to have the input because we can and do ask those questions though. So whether it's an anonymous tip, whether it's another external firm coming in, whether it's our own independent unannounced visits, all those things allow us to put the warden and others to task to say, are we doing this or what are we doing about this?
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. We are very short on time, and I might invite, and there's some specific questions in the chat about healthcare and both pharmaceutical use as well as there's a question about how we handle people coming with drug problems. Um, I'm going to take chair's prerogative and zoom out a bit and ask for some sort of give each of you a minute or two um, to give us some just final thought on, let's say, just hypothetically, if there was a county in Southwest Ohio that was exploring the establishment of a civilian oversight board. Um, is there advice that you would give us as we pursue this, like something that you learned through the process of establishing the board or that you're aware of that you think might be helpful?
Yeah. I'll go first because I can say I wasn't there during the establishment. I'm here only 2 years, so hopefully Michele has more specific advice about the establishment. But I would just say that there's a variety of perspectives that are needed. So again, it's not just the jail oversight board for me, and I don't know if there's a comparable setup where you are, but having the Pennsylvania Prison Society as another person with a different viewpoint, still having that community group, which is called, the Coalition for Prison Reform, having them still taking us to task, I think is important. So I would just say it isn't a once and done, and don't let your jail oversight board or whatever it might be think that it's the only one with independent eyes on that facility. You still need help.
Appreciate that, Michele.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I'm in the same boat as Barbara. I was not present for when this started, but I do know, and I know ours started right before the pandemic, so there was lots of challenges. But just stick with it and lots of communication. It took a long time, and again, Joel, I will be happy to send you our reports, and the initial one actually discusses a lot of how this came to be. But it's a lot of discussion. It's procedural, and it's coming up with, making sure that, it's not just this fly by night type. You want to have procedures in place. You want to have the right individuals and the certain roles of members, that kind of thing, and just keep talking it's been an organic thing that's been evolving and getting better. But it wasn't easy at first. So really just kind of try and stick with it.
Thank you. Excellent. 12:29. I'm going to call it. So I just want to thank Michele Vanderstreet from Essex County and Barbara O'Malley, Executive Director of the Oversight Board in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. I want to thank Councilmember Kevin Madden from Delaware County, who spoke early and then jumped off, as well as Judge Jose Linares from Essex County. So thank you to our speakers. Thank you to our participants. Appreciate you being here very, very much. And we will absolutely be in touch in the future because this is something that we're gonna stick with. So appreciate you sharing and your insight and your work, of course, in your own community. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. We will see you all soon. Take care.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. Appreciate it.
Welcome. Bye.